Yes, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Bit of breaking news this morning, which is that André Onana is not going to be replaced this summer. Latest reports indicate that Onana is expected to stay at United for the 25-26 season, despite some speculation in the summer so far that he's likely to be replaced. Reports also suggest that Amorim enjoys a warm working relationship with him and suggests that some stability in Onana's position would be a good thing. And the sentiment contrasts with the earlier reports that we got in June, actually, as well. So not even like long-term or even old reports, which are claiming that United were open to selling him to fund a new goalkeeper. There was interest from Saudi Arabia. And we were also looking at names like Diogo Costa, Milinković-Savić. I did a scout report myself last week where we looked at some potential options. But those reports, they highlighted the inconsistencies in his performance, the errors that led to goals last season, the save percentage, which last year was awful. Is this maybe another example of a financial issue at United? Is this a cause for concern after, seemingly having an idea to replace a goalkeeper and then suddenly the idea is that we're not going to replace that goalkeeper? It's almost like we're seeing a little bit of what looked like, what's the word I'm looking for here? Decisiveness from United 2 weeks ago. Come out the gate, Cunha's done, and Mbeumo's going to be next. Looks like Gyökeres or at least somebody else is going to be coming in for that striker role. And then everything just sort of screeched to a halt, and now it's kind of like, oh, yeah, we're back to normal. Ballsing up the transfer window. Personally, I didn't expect Onana to get replaced this summer. I certainly wouldn't tell you that he's had a good season last season, because I don't think he did have a good season. I just thought that replacing him was not the issue that I think some people had made it out to be. I certainly think that a midfielder would be more impactful for the team. I certainly think that a striker would be more impactful for the team. A right wing back would be more impactful for the team. It's on the list, but I thought it was about the middle of the list rather than the very top of that list. I also thought there was some decent options, but there weren't certainly many outstanding, oh my God, get him right now kind of options out there for us. Like I said, it just didn't. And I think that even though you can comfortably argue that he cost us Champions League football in his first season, I don't think he was anywhere near as bad as he was being made out. I'm certainly not telling you he was good when he wasn't, but he gets no credit for how good his saves were in the league, not in the Champions League, in his first season. And the other thing is as well, and I know Ant's just mentioned that in his comments, we signed him for the passing ability. We signed him for what we saw. I mean, I've referenced this game quite a few times, but it's one that I watched and I assume quite a lot of you guys watched. But in the Champions League against City, where you see him outside the box, in control of the ball, confidently knocking it around. Who did we sign? Because I haven't seen that player in a United shirt. I've seen a person that, whether he's playing to orders or whether his confidence has completely left him, I'm seeing a player that does not look like the guy and doesn't look like he's got the ability to do the stuff that I saw that guy do in the Champions League final. We did not sign him for being the best shot stopper in the world, which I know people will be like, hang on, that's the primary reason that you're a goalkeeper. And I agree, but that's not why we signed him, whether you agree or disagree with it, with whether you should or shouldn't sign someone on the back of that. Factually, that wasn't the reason we signed him. We signed him because he was an elite ball-playing goalkeeper. And we've literally not seen that. We've literally not seen any evidence of Onana's elite ball-playing. None. When we signed him, I did a load of scout reports. I was watching him and I was like, oh, I can see him hitting one of those diags in between the centre-half and a full-back with Rashford running onto. He's going to get assists this season because I can see that he can do it and I can see that he can unlock an attribute in our team. And it's literally not happened once. Not once. I see him with incredible range, spreading the ball out wide. Confidence to step into the number 6 with the ball in open play. And we just do not see that from him. I don't know if that's a coaching issue. And I mean specifically a goalkeeper coaching issue. I don't know if that's a confidence issue. I don't know if that's manager order issue. But like, even at Ajax under Erik ten Hag, you saw a different version of Onana than the one that we saw under Erik ten Hag at Manchester United. Now, I see a lot of frustration in the Stretford end when I'm at matches with Onana. The primary thing that I see the Stretford end getting frustrated with Onana is how slow he restarts play once he's got the ball in his hands. And I believe that is Amorim's order, because one thing that I thought was incredibly clear from when Amorim took over was how slower United were at moving through the thirds. It was very deliberate, it was very measured, and we were certainly not as vertically ambitious as we used to be under Erik ten Hag. That feels like it's him playing to orders. And it's not fair necessarily to criticise him for being slow releasing the ball if he's being told to slow things down every time he gets his hands on the ball. That's what I believe has been happening. That being said, it's interesting that we are going to keep him. And what do you guys think? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Ant says, is Onana the problem or are we the problem? Worries me. I see the exact same mistakes De Gea was making. I could agree with that to a greater or lesser degree. Sorry. Gazaroo says both our keepers need to go. Hopefully it won't be Clown Martinez coming in. Must be better options. I actually think Martinez would be a real mistake. I think he's got the character to be a Manchester United goalkeeper, but I think he makes quite obvious clangers. That would probably make Onana look like real calm. UFC says, no, it's Onana. The team can't stop him dropping it in his net. Now, that's happened literally a handful of times. Smith says, Ten Hag, product Onana, buying date, sell and sign Diogo Costa or Lucas Chevalier. Derek says, for me, a goalkeeper projects confidence in the team's defence and Onana does not do that. That alone for me is enough to let him go. Desarmo says, Costa's in the Champions League, the FA Cup, Doku, Europa League final, calamity. I mean, was it really him in the Europa League final? It's probably being a little bit unfair, I think, Daniel Stone says, doesn't control his area, stays on his line too much. I agree with that, to be honest. And De Gea did that too. But again, he didn't do that when we signed him. Tomo says, Martinez's reputation is higher than his ability. I agree with that. And I think a lot of that is down to how good he is at penalties. I think the fact that he's good at penalties elevates what people think of his reputation, because his save percentage in the league last season was exactly the same as Onana's, like to the point, whatever percent. Brian says, Onana has the opportunity to step up if a stable defence is there, although a top keeper is my preference. Deadly Mantis says, any keeper behind our midfield and defence last season would have struggled. And, I wonder on his distribution front, if you're trying to send it up to Højlund and all Højlund's interested in doing is trying to cuddle with the centre half, that's got to be so frustrating, hasn't it? Space Chimp says, I've noticed he always parries the ball into dangerous areas. Yeah, I've seen that as well. I think that's a modern keeper thing rather than just a pure Onana thing. Deadly Mantis says, statistically, he's better than Martinez. Too many have an agenda with Onana. Any keeper behind our midfield and defence last season would have struggled. Stephen says we need a Van der Sar, not a Barthez. There's not many of them about. Team says, no backbone in the team when your weakest link is in that. Our weakest link is not in that. He's up front. Ant says, Onana's save percentage is far higher than most would realise, to be fair. I mean, it was either first or second in the league last year, and he got zero credit for that. Amso Presh says, Højlund better not be our first choice striker next season. Honestly, I genuinely believe if you wanted to level up United, and literally like a week ago, I thought that was what we were on course to do, and I was feeling relatively positive about it. It's hard to not get swayed by what's going on in the media. But I thought, you bringing in Cunha, very good signing, very happy with that. You're bringing in Buemo, very good signing, very happy with that. If you brought in Gyökeres as well, you've literally leveled up that forward three by a serious magnitude. But obviously that's not happened yet. UFC says the pantomime villain role was funny though. Who are we talking about there? I'm not sure who we're talking about there. I just seen someone, I've lost it. DJ Coates says save percentage stats tell a tiny percentage of the story. They do. But then when you combine that with the fact that he saved, I think it's 8 or 9 goals more than he would be expected to in terms of the expected goals against, you're seeing a keeper that's actually nowhere near as bad as he's being painted to be. And that's the difference. Is it's not I'm certainly not sitting here telling you he's the best keeper in the league and that he can't be improved upon, because I think there's multiple areas of his game he can improve on. Dominating his box, claiming crosses, coming off his line, to name but a few. Even playing out to a degree that I've seen him do, just not in a United shirt, could all be levelled up. But there is an exaggeration of how bad he's been that I can't agree with. It's like sometimes, like people used to say, I hated Ashley Young or Fellaini. I didn't hate them. People would just massively over-egg how good they've been. And the same happened with Luke Shaw. He was decent, but people were, putting him in fucking memes of him being like Shawberto Carlos. And it's just like, people love to exaggerate. Generally, people are not anywhere near as good or as bad as people are making him out to be, except Højlund, who is factually as bad as he's being made out to be. Like Malp says, Onana is just terrible. He's not that fucking bad, is he? Mogamed says, why does Premier League proven only apply when Man United sign someone? Refresher says, if City were shit, Mourinho would have won United the Premier League. Don't know what that's in relation to. Glenn says, of the save percentage, how many went back into the danger area? It's not a stat that I have available, so I don't know. I don't even know if that is a stat. Daniel says, if we were to score more goals and Onana let the odd one in, we wouldn't even be talking about this. Literally, like, look at, was it Newcastle? Didn't they concede the same as us or something like that last season? They just scored 20 more than us. I'm sure it was something like that. Shubham says, I'm not saying he's the worst, but low shot stopping and more importantly, mistakes costing game after game is worrying. But again, it isn't. That's the whole thing. His shot stopping is not low. Brian says, goalkeepers are not what they used to be in the 90s. Schmeichel, Seaman, Van der Sar, Buffon, Kahn. I mean, I don't think football's the same as it was in the 90s. And is that because I'm old and it's back in my day it was better? Yeah, 1,000,000%. Of course it is. But there's also a little bit of truth to it too. I think it was, I think the 2000s it was better than the 90s. But I think the 90s were fucking far better from a footballing perspective than they were now. And I can accept that sports science has improved from the 90s. So the players are likely fitter now, but people talking like it's, you're talking elite athletes now and Sunday league players in the 90s. That's not the case. There were still some very fit athletes in the 90s. You're talking maybe a little bit fitter now, but the football levels and the football intelligence levels were through the fucking roof compared to now. Deadly says, if a keeper has to make a save, 10 other players haven't done their job. Quinn Yao says, the only problem with Onana is that you always get jittery with him, always feel like we have a goal waiting to be conceded when he plays, which speaks volumes on confidence. I could agree to a greater or lesser degree with that, but again, I don't know how much of that is him and how much of that is just how poor we are as a unit. Show says, the standard of keeper nowadays is the worst I've seen. So many incapable of saving basic shots. Gavin says, should never have got Onana. It's that simple. The guy's not a United player. Signed him off a clip of him giving Haaland shit in the Champions League final. I'm not sure that's the case, to be honest, but you are entitled to your opinion. Daniel says, United had 6 issues last season. Not scoring was 1 to 5. Goalkeeper was 6. Onana is inconsistent, slow, and definitely doesn't inspire confidence, but he's not the worst, but he needs to go, in my opinion. Let's see. I could largely agree with that. I think that it certainly isn't in the top 2 or 3, maybe even 4 issues that we need to fix. It's on the list, but I think it's some of us that we need to go and sort out beforehand. Deadly says more freedom and expression in the 90s, all robots now. I mean, just specialist strikers, specialist centre halves. Every single player is a central midfielder hybrid. You know, you've got centre halves that are just centre mids. You've got centre forwards that are just centre mids. You know, wingers and fullbacks might be the only sort of relatively specialist position that are out there at the moment. But even that, not really. You know, how many people can, like, Doku and Grealish to a different ends of the spectrum of 2 sort of quite unique players. But there used to be players like that in every single fucking team. Jiggers says, I put 100 smackers on United winning the league at 66-1. For those who aren't sure on what that translates to, 66-1 at 100 quid means he's just lost 100 quid. Dan says, get Onana out, can't be having shithouse mistakes again. Theo says, how can you be a United fan and like Green Bay Packers, you know, that Liverpool area? It's not really a thing though, is it? And also I've been a Green Bay Packers fan, man and boy, for about 18 months. For me, it was Vince Lombardi. That's, you know, in terms of like sporting philosophers, Vince Lombardi's completely up there. So it's one of those. Tomo says goalkeeper should be sorted next summer. Attack and midfield need investment now. Yeah, I'd largely go with that. Baliz says De Gea needed to go, but realistically, he would have kept more clean sheets over the last 2 seasons. And Mark says Grealish would do well at United. I agree that Grealish would be fucking great at United. On the, what was that? De Gea needed to go. De Gea needed to go because of his wages, because he completely upset the apple cart, and you know Woodward giving him that deal was fucking nuts. Red says we still need to bring in another quality keeper to give him competition. How? Yeah, from an FFP point of view, we're in a good spot. From a cash in the bank point of view, we are not in a good spot. If you believe them reports about us, you know, asking Liverpool, can they give us a fucking borrow? You know, we are not in the situation where we can just sign someone to give another keeper or another player competition at all. Sam says we should have signed Grealish instead of Sancho. I mean, there was talk that we could have got Grealish for 40 mil. And we dithered and didn't get it done. It's just ridiculous, in my opinion. Nathan says, 90s and 2000s, there was a plethora of players that made you fall in love with football because maybe we was younger, but then doesn't feel the same nowadays. Where'd you get the stats for the match for each player? SofaScore, usually. Yeah, they were. But, like, is it nostalgia? Is it rose-tinted? I don't think so, because I remember at the time just, you know, being genuinely excited to see the Euros, to watch the Champions League, to see your Del Pieros and your Crespos, and you know the sheer depth of unbelievable players. Especially like Italy had so many good players in the 90s. It was sensational watching. Daniel Stone says Guardiola ruined football. He gets a lot of credit that I don't believe is due. Spain was already playing tiki-taka in 2008 before he took the Spain job. So how's he, like before he even had a job, sorry. So how the fuck does that work? Merd says, if we're in such bad financial state, should we not have sold Bruno? He said we didn't need the money. It's a different question altogether, isn't it? Andrew says, Ollie wanted Grealish, but Judge and Woodward Googled midfield bargain and we got Donny van der Beek. But he's going to come good according to people in my comments still. So, wait that one. Richard says, how good was Italian football on Channel 4 and the kits were banging. Unbelievable. Kevin says, the reason for our poor positions in the league is because we can't score, not because of the goalkeeping. I generally agree with that. David Holt, this is quite a few who joined the membership on the channel. Nice one. Appreciate that. Johan Cruyff is turning his grave hearing about tiki-taka being Guardiola's. The problem is, Johan Cruyff and Guardiola's football is not the same. It really isn't the same. Cruyff preached a lot that Guardiola took up and took to a different level, but they're not the same. And Cruyff, obviously, as someone who was such a capable dribbler, he didn't want to see passing for passing's sake. He didn't want to see 20 passes to organise the opposition defence into a certain position so then you could begin to attack and dominate them with the ball. He was very much about individual freedoms and dribbling with the ball and that sort of stuff, the stuff that we all fell in love with. Shubham says, have I ever faced such a goalkeeping situation at Paddock, and how do you build this confidence back? Yes, we've had probably two good goalkeepers at Paddock. 3 if you include Nick Culkin, but he's only ever kind of been part-time. I think we've had, probably 2 in our time, and of those 2, Martin was quite advanced in his age and was talking about retiring all the time, and he was incredibly difficult to replace, very aggressive. And then this season we've had Florin. I don't know if we've got Florin next season. I know he's gone to... he went to Spain to see if he can get a club in Spain and was trying to go semi-pro in Spain. And I don't know if he's coming back. That's the top and bottom of it. So... how will we replace him next season? We do have some goalkeepers in the club. If they're ready to step up, I don't know. We'll have to find out. We'll hopefully see some competition coming in pre-season. Recruitment at our level's an absolute pain in the arse. But we shall see. See what happens. Greg says, I miss the players having shots from 30 yard and great crossing centre forwards. David says, they both got their style from Rinus Michels. Correct. Kieran says, gotta get back to work. Have a good day. Have a good day. Satyaki says, is there a club out there that would consider taking on Rashford, Sancho, Anthony Shaw or Højlund? Maybe. But all of them, I would find that hard to believe. MK Dizzle says, do I think Tony Pulis long ball would do well in this area if everyone else playing off from the back? Yeah, well, you're already seeing it. You are already seeing it. You're already seeing teams go over the press because teams are increasingly going 1v1 in their press, which means that they're going 1v1 in the back line, on the halfway line. If you've got pace, if you've got players that can beat somebody 1v1, you can be incredibly effective by going direct from goal kicks, absolutely. But I think you almost have to disguise it. I think you have to maybe look like you're about to play out, maybe set one back to the keeper and have the keeper fucking send one as a player starts getting on his toes. Maybe we'll work on that in pre-season at Paddock, because I do think that's if a team pushes up against us, that's a good effective way, especially with where we play. We play at Hyde United, which is a absolute carpet, dead wide, dead big. There's loads of things we can do to take advantage of that. Stuff Scott does says, hi Stephen, a random thought, I don't know if you'd be on to anything, but I think players have less bandwidth to deal with everything else that comes with being a pro footballer. Maybe. KRG says, Steve, you got this one wrong. He's our second weakest link. Totally disagree with you. I think not being able to score is our factual weakest link. Striker. I think having another midfielder that could be a first choice would be our second, and then I think chance creation would be our third, and then I think the keeper would be fourth or fifth. Team Bill says, if Onana's staying, does that mean we're not looking for a new goalkeeper? I would presume so. Ben Potts says Onana is 100% our biggest problem. He 100% is not. Kieran says, am I more of a league fan, but do I watch the British and Irish Lions? No. Twiz says, I really don't think he is a problem. A keeper is only as good as defence and midfield. Mark says, can we agree Brighton and Bournemouth have better squads than United? Yep. Stephen says, 3 keepers at Paddock. Mason rarely put a foot wrong. Mason had a clanger in him. His head would go early doors if he conceded, but he was an excellent keeper, and he will be an excellent keeper. And he's actually made a debut for Hyde this season, playing. Are they Northern Prem? Yeah, the Northern Prem, aren't they? Yeah, for Hyde. So yeah, Mason, it was a fantastic keeper, but he was a teenager. You know, he needed more minutes in the first team, which he's got. And then he broke his wrist. I mean, his penalty saving was fantastic. But yeah, it was a confidence thing, I think, with Mason. It wasn't an ability thing. It was a confidence thing. Like the mental side of being a goalkeeper, it's not inconsiderable. Like there's quite a lot to being a goalkeeper. And, you know, I think that's why Florin's been as good as he is, because he's off his fucking nut. Isn't it? Notch says, probably didn't have the funds to get an Onana replacement. We have yet to move a player on this window for the budget. That's true. And that's a massive issue for us, isn't it? Donald says, would I say any teams in the Club World Cup are getting a head start on their pre-season? In essence, tough matchups and all prepping for the new season. No, you are still in last season mode, I think. I've actually just done a video. It'll either come out tomorrow or probably Wednesday, which is, I don't know if I'll actually use this in the title, but why the Club World Cup is bullshit. Because it's bullshit, innit? So stay tuned for that. But anyway, that's it from me. I want to wrap it up. Got loads to do. But cheers for tuning in as always. I'll be live if anything breaks. But it doesn't feel like anything's cracking off at the moment, does it? So maybe we'll just take it easy. See you in the next one. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice.